town. A slave girl ringing a bell precedes them. The sound warns every male to get out of the path and to look away. Any man who touches a woman in an Amazon procession will be killed. The Amazons execute prisoners without mercy, mostly by beheading. One French delegation that visits Dahomey in the mid-1880s reports seeing an Amazon girl about 16 in training. She takes 3 swings with a machete before completely removing the head of a prisoner. She wipes the blood from her sword with her hand and then swallows it. Her fellow Amazons scream in frenzied approval. An Amazon chant confirms the pleasure derived from killing.
We are not women. We are man. Knife between our teeth, we scale the rocks. We will drive those warthogs out of their hole. For our body is better armed than the porcupines. And if we no longer had an axe, or arrow, or dagger to defend us, don't we have our filed teeth, ready to bite and tear, and our hard fingers stronger than iron claws?
How did Dahomey become home to such a violent race of women? European explorers learned that women began training for battle in the early 1800s.
The kings of Dahomey, in creating the Amazon Corps, they hoped to make up some of the disparity in manpower. It was the Yoruba threat to the east, and the Yoruba were not only prey for Dahomeyan slave raids, but they competed. The Yoruba were in the slaving business too. That disparity between the Yoruba and the Fon populations accounts for is a special circumstance that accounts for the formation of the Amazon Corps in Dahomey. It was a manpower shortage, basically.
An Amazon in Dahomey is a position of status, a rank high above non-Amazon women in the society. It is an honor the Amazons vow never to surrender. In 1872, the British entomologist J. Alfred Skirchley sees that dedication when he witnesses a battalion of Amazons defeat a rival army.
What spectacle is more calculated to inspire horror than a savage and brutal woman in a passion? And when we imagine such to be besprinkled with the blood of the slain, and perhaps carrying the gory head of some decapitated victim, one may cease to wonder at the dread with which these female warriors were, and still are, looked upon by the surrounding nations.
For nearly 100 years, the people of Dahomey, both men and women, wage war against the Mahi tribe to the north and the Oyo to the east. The fights are usually to avenge insults, capture slaves, or find victims for human sacrifices.
The Amazons of Dahomey were not exactly role models for feminists. For one thing, they engaged in the really sordid business of slave catching. They did not exalt womanhood. When they surpassed the men as warriors, they claimed that they had been transformed. They had become men.
It will take the French expansionism of the 1890s to put an end to Dahomey's Amazons. On June 15, 1892, French ships begin a naval blockade of Dahomey to keep shipments of guns from reaching its shores. After 5 months of fighting, on November 4th, the Dahomey forces make their last stand at the city of Cana. The battle is one of the most murderous of the campaign.
They seemed to be immune to fear. They'd rush in, and if they were cut down by a bayonet thrust, even mortally wounded, they'd fight back. There were some who would bite the throats of French soldiers. They really fought tooth and nail.
An Amazon knocks a French cavalry officer named Nulito off of his horse. He looks up to see an Amazon bearing down on him, a carbine in her hand and a machete between her teeth. Nulito later wrote that the woman roars like a wild beast, but he has time to fire and shatters her head with a revolver bullet.
Amazons took part in that last battle. The Dahomey gave up there. They sent a peace delegation to the French camp, and a French officer asked the head of that peace delegation how many Amazons had been fighting against the French and how many were still fighting. And the man said 1,200 at the beginning of the 7 weeks, and only 50 or 60 were left at the end.
Even after the French subdue the Amazons in Dahomey, the killing continues. Uniformed French soldiers who take Dahomey women to bed are often found dead in the morning, their throats ripped out.
There's no corroboration for this in French records. If really these things had taken place, the French, I think, would have attributed the deaths to other causes.
Years later, in 1934, a British traveler named Geoffrey Gore visits Dahomey. Seated in front of the old palace is an aging Amazon.
She was an incredibly old and withered hag spinning cotton. She was the last of the Amazons who had fought against the French. There was something very pathetic and romantic about this battered old relic from a completely dead age. She, who had once proudly boasted that she was not a woman, but a man, was now reduced to the degradation of spinning. She, who had once captured her own booty with a musket and cutlass, was happy, for a little money, to hobble into the sun and be photographed.
There are rumors that some Amazons lived to more than 100 well into the 1970s, and they continued to tell the stories to the young girls in their villages of how they once fought against the French. When we return, a new generation of Amazons takes up arms.
We're still, when women hunt today, they're just going back to, what should we say, traditional values.
In the summer of 1999, 2 teenage girls take part in the dig. One is from the United States, the other is a local girl from a village in western Mongolia. For Janine Davis Kimball, the archaeologist who first unearthed evidence of female warriors, having 2 young girls participate in the excavation is a continuation of the Amazon spirit.
That could very well be the lesson of the Amazons, that this is a positive manner in which young women can become Amazons in that mythological sense, that they can go out and they can do all sorts of interesting things. They can fight big battles and become legends themselves. Who knows?